Hey guys, my name is Toby and welcome back to another exciting Photoshop tutorial where this time we're going to be taking a look at masking. Now, masking is one of the absolute core fundamental skills that I think everybody should know how to do, and it always surprises me how many people don't actually know about this. So let's get going, because this is something that you are going to use day in, day out. Absolutely useful technique to know. So before we actually start talking about masking, let's talk about kind of the alternative and why it's not as good. Now, what we were trying to do is we're going to try and cut out this balloon to put it into a different image. So we want to remove the background. Now, what we can do for the slightly not so good way of doing it is, first of all, we need to unlock our background layer, which in old versions of Photoshop you do by double clicking and then hitting OK. But in CC, you can actually now just click the padlock and it will go back to a layer. So now we've got our layer, we need to go to our eraser tool, keyboard shortcut E. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. And we can start to erase our background to checkerboard. And checkerboard means there's no information there and that is just completely transparent. And we kind of have begun the process of cutting out our balloon. Now, the problem with this method is that once you kind of have to get in close, you have to be very careful. In fact, that's actually cut off a bit of the balloon, so you have to be very, very precise, and generally that will mean using a smaller brush and zooming in to make sure that you're going to get everything. So you can do it this way. I mean, there's technically nothing wrong with this approach. It's kind of not really, it's like shooting yourself in the foot when you don't need to. So yeah, you can come in here and you can, oops, see that's a problem. If you mess it up, you have to edit undo. That's the main thing with this. If you make a mistake, the only way to get back your information is to edit undo and try again. So, you know, I'm not even getting all of this. I'd have to be really close in, I think, to do this really well. But let's say, hypothetically, that we accidentally remove a bit of the image that we wanted to keep, but we don't spot that we did. And we carry on working, kind of oblivious, and, you know, we're going to make maybe a couple hundred clicks as we kind of go around this and very carefully and painstakingly kind of erase the background. And, you know, we could maybe do more or less the whole thing. I mean, I'm actually not doing a horrible job of this, if I do say so myself. But there we go. Just missed a bit there, but we're going to leave that. I'm just going to keep going and keep going. And then we kind of get almost to the end and then we go, oh no, we've chopped off the basket like about 5 minutes ago at the beginning. And that means that the only way to get that back really is to edit undo a whole bunch of times. And if we go to our history panel, it hasn't quite gone off the end yet, but as some of you may know, the history panel isn't infinite. You don't have an infinite number of undos. Maybe you've got something like 50 undos before you can't go back any further. And that is something you can change in your preferences, but you still can't make it infinite. And generally, the more undos that you have to store, the worse it will be for your machine. It will actually slow down your computer because it's having to remember every single one of these undo states. So the only way to get it back is to sit here and go, Command undo, and just have to undo all of that lovely work we've just done, all of that progress we've made. We now have to undo because 10 minutes ago we made a stupid mistake. So, back where we started, now you have to do that all again, and it is going to take you a long time to fix. Now, there are some of you out there who are talking about using the history brush. I'm sure a couple of you have come across this, and yes, that would fix it, but there's still a better way of doing it rather than having to rely on the history brush. Now, the better way to approach this is to use a mask, and I'm going to show you what that will do. So first thing we need to do is, with our layer, we need to click on this little button here at the bottom of the layers panel, which is the rectangle with a circle in it, which is our mask button. Now, what it's done is next to our layer thumbnail of our picture, it's put this white box. And the way this works is basically you have to be very careful which one of these you have selected. If you have the layer selected indicated by these kind of white corners, and we take, let's say, our brush tool, and you start painting in here, it's actually just going to paint onto our layer, which isn't what we want to do. Now, if you take the brush tool and you paint onto the mask, what it's going to do is it's going to erase the background. And we are using the paintbrush tool here to paint onto the mask, and we're painting black into our mask. Now, if you look at the thumbnail for the mask, you can kind of see that updating of what I'm doing. And basically what's happening is anything that's black in the mask will appear as transparent on this layer. Anything that's white will appear as opaque. And the thing is, what we can do is, let's say we make a mistake, in this case removing the entire balloon. If we paint with white, we can put that back. So what we need to do is swap our background and foreground colors, which is very easy to do. If you just tap X on the keyboard, it will just flick between whatever you have set as your foreground and background colors. In this case, black and white. And if we paint with white, we can get our balloon back. So this works completely independently of the undo queue and the history tab. So every single stroke is going to add another brush stroke. And the reason this works is because we're not actually erasing information. This whole picture is still there. All we're doing is we're using the mask to dictate which bits of it we can and can't see. So to give you a slightly better idea of what I'm doing, if you hold down Alt or Option on the Mac and you click the layer mask, it will actually show you full screen what your mask is. So hopefully you can see when I Alt click again that the black areas are transparent and the white areas are opaque. Now, I know you're sitting there thinking, well, okay, that's good. It means that you can kind of make mistakes and fix them. So let's have a quick go at that. So you could come in here and you could start kind of editing stuff and then go, oh, actually, we need to use a harder, smaller brush. And, so harder, smaller brush. And we can just come in, and if you kind of cross the line, you can go, well, actually, I'm just going to paint now with white by hitting X. And you can just kind of swap by hitting X back and forth between kind of black and white for add and remove. And you can go around and you can do this, and you don't need to worry too much about making mistakes because nothing that you do is actually damaging. This is kind of a very non-destructive way to erase certain parts of your image. And this is just one use for masks. There's plenty of things you can do with them. If you've ever used adjustment layers, you may notice the little white box next to it. That is in fact a mask. So you can selectively apply your adjustments using a mask to your image. Now, where this gets kind of a bit easier is because this is kind of doing it manually. What you can actually do, I am just going to fill this back in with white quickly. I'm just going to fill back in our entire mask. In fact, I'm not even going to do that. I'm going to delete our mask. If you are familiar with selections, what you're going to find is that selections and masks are kind of the same thing in a strange way. So I'm actually going to use our quick select tool, and I'm going to make a selection. There we go. And because I've got a very simple background, it's actually done quite a good job. It maybe could do a slightly better job just there. We'll just do this a little bit by hand, and there we go, something like that. Now what we can do, now we have our selection, is we can, with our selection kind of active, if we now make a mask, it's going to make a mask of that selection. How good is that? Well, I know it's kind of the wrong way around at the moment, but because the way you need to think of a mask is it's just a black and white image that dictates your transparency. So anything that you can do to an image, you can do to a mask. So for instance, if I alt-click to bring up the mask as a full view, we actually want the white bits to be black and the black bits to be white. So what we can do is we can go to invert our image, which is keyboard shortcut Command or Control on the PC and the letter I. And that will invert our mask, which means, if we alt-click off now, that we've actually now changed it so that the sky is transparent and our balloon is opaque. And that's done. That's 30 seconds of work done. Quite good. Okay. Now, like I said, masks and selections are kind of the same thing. So if you ever actually want to get a selection from a mask, if you hold down Control or Command on the PC, get that right, Command on the Mac and Control on the PC, and then click your mask, it will give you a selection based off of that mask. And that's quite useful because sometimes you do need to flick between using a mask or using a selection. So now that we've gotten our lovely new layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this up and drop it into another image. And there we go, we have our lovely mask with our perfectly cut out balloon in this new image. And I think that is just about gonna do it for this one. We'll take another look at using masks and adjustment layers another time, but thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this helpful, and we'll see you next time.